If We're Being Honest. Written by the Queen of Wump. Read for you by Charcoal Bits. Chapter 3. Bakugo. Part 1. Trigger warnings in this chapter include mentions of bullying, depression, anxiety, quirkless discrimination, and minor past suicidal thoughts. So it turned out that it was possible to not answer direct questions. It took a lot of willpower, like when you're worked well past your limit and you have to mentally push yourself to do one more set. It was pretty much impossible, though, when you weren't expecting the question, which Izuku realized during breakfast. It was a nice affair to begin with. Nobody was treating him like he was made of glass, which he greatly appreciated. Everyone was being a bit nicer to him than normal, though, but he really didn't mind. It was different. Much different than most people when they found out he was quirkless. Different, but nice. That is, until Shinso slammed his hands down on the table in front of him. I love and appreciate you. The idle chatter at the table stopped. Izuku stared at him, since his aggressive tone didn't match his words at all. What? He huffed. My stupid insomnia kept me up as usual, and mixed how I was worried about you, I barely got any sleep. Sorry? No, it's not your fault, he groaned, rubbing his face with his hands. That was too much information. I was worried, but I was also thinking about how much I appreciate you as a friend, and I'm glad I got to know you. I was also angry all night at the people who hurt you, but that's less important. Izuku felt something warm fill his chest. Thank you. I don't think you understand how much I appreciate you saying that. You're welcome, he said, face a bit red, obviously slightly embarrassed by everything he had just said, before adding almost as an afterthought. So who did bully you? Izuku's mouth opened on its own. Tsubasa Ito, Nico Takahashi, Bakugo Katsuki. He slapped a hand over his mouth, but he was a second too late. The damage had been done. Yeah. Questions asked that would catch you off guard were impossible. Everyone stared at him, and he got a strange sense of déjà vu from the day before. The eyes slowly turned to the blonde sitting at the table, who was glaring at his food in front of him like it had killed his family. Izuku felt Shoto stand up next to him, and he felt a rush of panic hit his chest. Bakugo. His voice was as cold as his ice. Do I need to punch you? Katsuki stood up abruptly and started to march around the table. Let's go half and half, you and me right now. I'll enjoy wiping that smirk off your face. I'd like to see you fucking try. Stop! Izuku yelled, jumping up and physically putting himself between the two. This isn't going to do anything but get you guys in trouble. Shouldn't he be in trouble, though? Uraraka said, and she sounded pissed. I think bullying is grounds for expulsion here. Katsuki rounded on her, too. You want to do over the sports festival, Gravity bitch? I have a name, and so does Midoriya. Wait, she didn't call him. Maybe if you had a heart, you would realize that. Uraraka, you can still call me Deku, he said, unsure of how to stop the building tension. It's my hero name. Guys, calm down, Kirishima said slowly. We don't know the full story here. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, finally. So what's the whole story? Shoto asked, still looking just as angry as he had during the sports festival. He was a bully most of our childhood, foolishly verbal, but a little physical at times. He flinched at his own words. Wait, that sounded really bad. That's because it is bad. Ida had joined in now, clearly over his apparent shock. Midoriya, you have to realize that this is not okay. I know it wasn't okay. Of course it wasn't. But it's not like anybody ever told him to stop. The teachers and the kids all practically worshipped him. You didn't know any better. That may have been the case for when he was younger, but it shouldn't have been an issue past elementary school, Yamamoto said with a glare. A moral compass would have kicked in by then. I'll fight you too, Ponytail. Kachan, you're not helping. Maybe I don't want to help myself, Deku. And yeah, they all forgot about the truth quirk right there. Izuku would remember his words later and realize and mentally kick himself 100 times over. Good, because we don't want to help you either. I can't believe we ever thought you two were just old rivals. Uraraka seemed to be out for blood at this point, getting right up in his face. Why would you ever hurt someone like Deku? Oh, good. She was calling him Deku again. One problem down, a million more to go. Katsuki clicked his tongue. Lots of reasons. Maybe he was just that annoying. The slap rang throughout the room. Uraraka was breathing hard. Don't talk about him like that, she spat, before walking back over to Izuku and Shoto. Izuku just gaped at her. What part of fighting will only get us in trouble did you not understand? It was way more aggressive than he would normally be, but then again, they all were. Uraraka just gave it right back to him. Are you seriously judging me right now? Why are you defending him? How bad did it even get? What was the worst he ever did? And yeah, she definitely wouldn't have asked if she had been in her right mind, truth quirk or not, but she wasn't. Physically, breaking my arm. Verbally, telling me to jump off a roof. The shock was almost tangible in the air. No one moved for a long time. Or maybe it just felt like a long time. Give me one good reason I shouldn't report this to Aizawa. Ida was physically shaking. Whether it was from anger or distress, Izuku didn't know. His mouth almost didn't want to work, but the quirk was actually a blessing for once. He's changed. He isn't like that anymore, and I've forgiven him already. Did he actually ever apologize? Shota said quietly. Or are you just that kind? Izuku's mouth felt dry. No, he didn't, but... This is the kind of behavior that shouldn't be forgiven without an apology, Ida said, almost looking disappointed in his friend. But stop defending him, Shoto yelled, before regret immediately filled his face as he realized he had just yelled at Izuku. I'm sorry, I just don't think that this is okay. Izuku huffed. I'm feeling that from a lot of people. It's honestly kind of weird. Our teachers never cared. Wait, the school didn't even do anything? Uraraka asked incredulously. Izuku really didn't want to stir up the storm waiting in his friend's eyes, but he had no control over the words that left his mouth. Not really. The only time they did anything was when he broke my arm, and even then they just called his mom. He looked up, face red, to see everyone staring at him in what couldn't be anything other than shock. The worst seemed to be Kirishima, who shifted to look at his boyfriend with wide eyes. Is all of this true, Katsuki? He whispered. Izuku felt his heart break a little, because even though Kirishima knew full well that every single word that came out from their mouths was the truth, he still didn't want to believe it. Izuku didn't want to believe it, if he was being honest. It was really horrible. Katsuki shifted. He had been staring at the ground ever since Uraraka had slapped him. Of course it is, you idiot. But when I broke his arm, I was suspended for 3 days. Oh, he hadn't known that. Since he had been out of school due to his arm, they were tight on money, and they couldn't get a good doctor for a while. And Deku, they called my mom more often than that. Kirishima flinched back at the harsh tone coming from the blonde, but still found his voice to ask. Why? I didn't mean to break his arm, and it's none of your business, or any of you for that matter. Kirishima really flinched that time. He soon backed off from the blonde altogether before looking down and grabbing his bag from his seat. I'm going to class, he muttered, and then he left, head still down. Katsuki was definitely biting his lip, which meant he definitely wanted to say something. But of course he wasn't going to, because he was Bakugo Katsuki, and Bakugo Katsuki was the most stubborn person on the planet. Stubborn enough to fight a literal truth quirk and win. Soon, everyone was leaving, until it was just Izuku, Shoto, and Katsuki, who still hadn't moved. Are you coming? Shoto asked, looking between the two. Yeah, but can I have a minute alone with Kachan? Shoto sighed, like he knew this was coming. Fine. It doesn't mean I'm happy with your decision. Ouch. Once they were alone, Katsuki finally stopped biting his lip. Don't you dare apologize, nerd. It was gonna come out. You can't keep anything under wraps. Izuku rolled his eyes. We should start walking now so we're not late. Katsuki moved to grab his things, but he didn't say anything else as he started walking out the door. Izuku huffed in exasperation before rushing to follow him. If you want them to forgive you, you're going to have to actually talk to them. Can't force me to talk. This dumb court can't either. That doesn't mean you shouldn't talk to them. Izuku got in front of him and started walking backwards, but of course, Katsuki was still avoiding his gaze. Don't you want Kirishima to understand? He exhaled in a way that could have almost been a laugh. You say that like you understand. Izuku rolled his eyes again. I understand more than you think. Associating with me would make you look weak, and you hate being weak. He almost laughed again. It was a moment before he spoke. And what makes you think the others will believe you? And don't say anything about this stupid quirk. You can say things that you think are true, but are completely false. Like when Kaminari said that the bushes in the front lawn were poisonous. That is true, Izuku said with a snort. And they'll believe me because you're gonna back me up. What did I just say now about thinking these things are true? Ha ha. But seriously, if we both tell them the same story, they'll believe us. I'll tell them about how I wouldn't leave you alone and you just had way too much pent-up aggression for a 5-year-old. I was almost a stalker, for crying out loud. A stalker? He asked, almost looking like he was about to start laughing hysterically. Literally everyone followed me around. We were fucking children. Anyone else take notes on your quirk, though? You were just trying to practice your analysis. It's not like felt like training physically would help you at all, since everyone told you how weak you would always be. I guess, but I could have at least picked up some weights, Izuku said quietly. Sometimes I wonder if I was even serious about being a hero back then. Of course you were serious! Katsuki yelled, surprising him. You were just using that big brain of yours instead of your weak little body, even if I never realized it. You even told me that was the reason you could help me from that stupid sludge villain. And don't act like you didn't drop everything to train your ass off with All Might. You're literally the opposite of lazy. So you don't mind my notes on you? He genuinely asked, because for some reason, that stuck out to him the most. He had been the one to destroy his notebook after all. I mean, it was a little weird, but you've always been weird, and you love quirks. And you really admired me. I admire you too now, and I'm glad we're friends again, Katsuki said, these words almost absent-mindedly, then turned bright red. Izuku definitely wasn't close to tears. Nope. He did his best to lighten the mood, knowing his friend was now majorly uncomfortable, even if he was telling the truth. The blonde never really did the whole emotions thing. It's a good thing I ate that strand of hair then, isn't it? Katsuki let out a bark of laughter. Whatever you say, Deku. And then, I know you already told me, but I just want to know for sure. You never looked down on me, did you? Izuku casually wiped at his eyes. Oh, of course not, Kachan. You were my best friend. Katsuki turned away with suspiciously wet eyes. Thanks, nerd. They arrived at homeroom just in time, and they noticed how everyone stiffened when they walked in together. Aizawa most definitely noticed, but didn't say anything, and for that, Izuku was grateful. They really didn't need a mass confrontation right now. Alright, class. For today's hero training, you'll be working in pairs. You pick, I don't care. All Might is waiting for you at ground beta. Pick your partners before you arrive. Good luck, he said, before promptly falling asleep. As everyone started pairing off, Izuku noticed one very clear thing. Everyone was avoiding Katsuki. So he turned to him and loudly said with a big smile, Hey Kachan, wanna be partners? A lot of the chatter ceased, and heads whipped around to look at the two of them. I guess. Izuku grinned even wider. Great! Kirishima, do you want to be my partner? Shoto asked, staring Izuku dead in the eyes. Izuku could feel his heart start to break into a million pieces. But he just kept smiling, and maybe bit his tongue to keep from speaking, too. Sure, man, the redhead said, far less enthusiastic than normal. He looked over at Katsuki, who just turned his head away. Something hardened in Kirishima's eyes, and it had nothing to do with his quirk. Let's win this. Izuku saw Katsuki stand up next to him before getting right into his line of sight, looking him square in the face. I'm only gonna say this once, nerd. We are winning this thing, or I'm gonna metaphorically blast your face off. Even with the metaphorically, several people gasped at Katsuki's sudden word of aggression and looked very worried for Izuku's safety, like he was still a fragile, quirkless middle schooler. Izuku just smirked and stood up, eager to prove them wrong. I'm counting on it. They ended up winning the exercise. No surprise there. Everyone grudgingly congratulated them, meaning they very clearly stated that they were still very upset after their words of good sportsmanship. Fuck all of you except Deku and Shitty Hair, Katsuki had said before heading back to the dorms alone. Izuku sighed for what had to be the 100th time that day before walking over to his friends. He seems ticked. He also doesn't want to defend himself to you guys. Uraraka turned and started walking away. I don't care if he defends himself or not. I'm not forgiving him. And with that, she was gone. Izuku looked back at Ida and Shoto. Are you guys gonna leave me too? And maybe this quirk was making him way blencher than normal, but he couldn't bring himself to care. Shoto blanched. No, we're not. It's not you I'm mad at, even if I'm a bit upset with your choices. Izuku opened his mouth to tell him that he could make his own decisions. Shoto meant well, but he didn't understand. Wait. Izuku's eyes widened as he realized something. He had to bite his tongue from blurting out right then and there. It should have been obvious from the start. He turned to Ida and spoke carefully. I'm gonna go ahead and head back with Shoto. We need to talk. Izuku looked at him. Shoto looked at him, almost in fear, at the dreaded traditional breakup words. Izuku could hardly blame him for seeming afraid, after all. He probably had a very angry expression on his face. Ida simply nodded, and soon they were on their way to the dorms, away from anyone who could potentially eavesdrop. Izuku broke the silence. He's not Endeavor. Shoto's head snapped up. What? Kachan, he's not Endeavor. Shoto scowled and looked at the ground. Izuku had hit the nail right on the head. You know I can't deny I've been thinking about it. They were both power-hungry people that held too much over us. Why are you defending either of them? Izuku shook his head. I'm definitely not defending Endeavor. He was a grown man, adult, that made the decision to abuse his family. Kachan was a child raised to believe he was better than everyone else in a society where I was expandable. Shoto winced at his words. You're not expandable. I was treated that way, though, he said as he kicked a rock. And everyone else believed it. So, for a kid with a powerful quirk to be seen as weak for even associating with me, it was clear what path he would take. That doesn't make it right. Of course it doesn't, he practically shouted. But it's different. Kachan realized his mistakes and is already trying to be better. Endeavor hurt you and your family for practically decades without a hint of remorse. Shoto glanced at him, not saying anything for a moment. Izuku was afraid he had gone too far when he felt a hand wrap around his own. You're right, he said quietly. I know you're right. I'm sorry, but I'm still upset with him. It's okay. It's okay, Izuku said, really flooding his veins. I know how hard it is to forgive the people that hurt you. I know how hard it is to forgive the people that hurt those you care about. Like a certain dumpster fire. Shoto smiled. I like it when you call them the stupid nicknames, you know. Trash monster, burning sulfur. Did you know that I thought burning trash was illegal, but then I met your sperm donor? His boyfriend was openly laughing now, and Izuku didn't hesitate to pull him into a side hug as they walked. Shoto kissed the top of his head, and for a moment, everything felt right. It was the first official movie night of the Class 1A's Truth Quarantine, and everyone gathered into the common room, talking animatedly about what movies they were going to choose. Well, everyone was there except a certain childhood friend of Izuku's. He couldn't take it anymore, the way they were all just pretending he wasn't there, so he stood up and made his way to the elevator, ignoring the protest from everyone else. He knocked on Katsuki's door, and when he received no answer, he just knocked harder. What do you want? Katsuki grumbled from inside. You're gonna come downstairs and explain this with me. he said matter-of-factly. And what makes you think I'm going to do that? Because I'm asking you to? This is usually when I would say something sarcastic, but I can't now. So I'm just going to say you're not funny. Izuku huffed before leaning against the door. He closed his eyes and let his mouth run, letting his emotions and the truth quirk overtake him. I know you're sorry, he said quietly. I don't need to hear you say the words because I know you hate feeling weak. I know you're trying to be better too. And yeah, you did some really shitty stuff. But we were kids, okay? We're still kids. I think everyone else forgot about that. We're still learning, and we're gonna keep learning. No response. He almost kicked the door in frustration. I know you better than anyone here, Kashan. Even Kirishima. I know you don't want to admit you were wrong in front of everyone, but you gotta do it eventually, or it's gonna eat you alive. What makes you think all that? Katsuki asked. His voice sounded slightly choked. Well, for one, I know you can't stand not having Kirishima around, even if you won't admit it. And the rest of your friends. You care about what they think of you, no matter how much you pretend otherwise. No sound was coming from behind him. Maybe he should try picking the lock? He suddenly fell back as the door opened, and he would have fallen right into Katsuki if he hadn't caught him and pushed him off. Why were you leaning on my door? Honestly, I thought it would take way longer to convince you. His friend snorted. Of course you did. When the elevator door slid open to the common room, chatter seemed to cease. Izuku realized that everyone seemed to be staring at him a lot lately. Look, he said, as he and his friend left the elevator. I know you're mad at Kachan, and for good reason. I just... Give us a chance to explain our relationship better, okay? It's gotten better, I promise. Nobody made a move to say anything, and Izuku watched as they all made questioning eye contact with each other. He met Shoto's eyes, and he saw him give a slight nod and smile. He sighed in relief, glad to have him on their side since he had talked to him earlier. Izuku wondered if his boyfriend had talked to the others while he was upstairs. Promises are kind of redundant right now. Jiro deadpanned when no one else spoke. I guess you're right, he said, glad that was the only protest. So, can we do this? He waited for all of them to nod as he and Katsuki sat down, and he looked down at the ground with a sheepish smile. I guess we should start at the beginning. And with that, Izuku began to tell the story of two childhood friends born into a society that valued strength over kindness, about how his classmates had all learned about his quirklessness and immediately turned their backs on him, about a horrible environment that pushed one boy down while raising the other up, and how one of the boys thought the other was looking down on him and retaliated. I know it was wrong of him, but I can't be all that mad at him, can I? He was just like every other kid in that class. Our teachers pretty much encouraged the bullying from kindergarten up. I was always the instigator for the fights on official reports. But that's ridiculous, Ida exclaimed. How could the teachers lie on forms like that? We didn't all grow up rich, Glasses, Tatsuki cut in. We were in a poor neighborhood. The school was prejudiced and fucking horrible. Everyone seemed surprised to hear Katsuki speak that way about the place that raised him, if only because it backed up what Izuku was saying. I want to hear you apologize, Uraraka suddenly hissed. I get it. Our society sucks, and you thought he was looking down on you, but that doesn't excuse the years of abuse you put him through. I know that doesn't excuse it, Katsuki hissed right back. I'm damn well aware of that, and it's not like that was the only reason I did it. I have so many excuses I could use, but I'm not going to. I was a shitty person. Can't we leave it at that? I still think an apology is in order, Shoto muttered. Guys, Izuku said slowly, I don't need to actually hear him say it, okay? He hates apologizing, alright? It makes him feel weak. Don't go telling him that, stupid nerd. Well, it does, so I'm not going to let them hold that over your head. I'm interested in the other reasons you bullied him, Yamomo said abruptly, crossing her arms. And don't say something like he was annoying, because that is simply unacceptable. I just said that to get you guys off my back earlier. He was pretty annoying though, and wouldn't leave me alone about my quirk. Hey, what the fuck happened to asking questions without explicit permission? I came up with that. Kaminari whispered excitedly to himself. But you're right, Izuku said with a sad smile. I really didn't leave you alone about your quirk. I probably should have given you some space. So what other reasons were there? Kirishima said, looking down like he had been all day. I just said that to get you guys off my back earlier. He was pretty annoying though, and wouldn't leave me alone about my quirk. Hey, what the fuck happened to asking questions without explicit permission? I came up with that. Kaminari whispered excitedly to himself. But you're right, Izuku said with a sad smile. I really didn't leave you alone about your quirk. I probably should have given you some space. So what other reasons were there? Kirishima said, looking down like he had been all day. I want to understand. Everyone else turned to look at Katsuki, interested but obviously apprehensive about what he was going to say. Honestly, Izuku felt the same exact way. What was he going to say? Katsuki shifted, looking down at the floor uncomfortably. It was a long time before he spoke. Part of the reason was because my quirk makes me have low blood pressure, and my body has to constantly pump me with adrenaline to keep me conscious. I had a lot of anger and nowhere to put it. Izuku blanched in shock. After all that had happened, that was one of the reasons why Katsuki had been so cruel to him, because he literally had to be angry to stay conscious. Katsuki looked just as unnerved by his confession as Izuku was, if a bit flustered, as did everyone else. It was like everything they knew about the fiery boy finally made sense. Of course he was always fired up. If he wasn't, he might collapse. Or worse. Kachan. I had no idea, he said quietly. Katsuki just puffed out something that was almost like a laugh, but wasn't quite there. Yeah, well, I'm surprised with all that note-taking you did on my quirk. Now it was Izuku's turn to be flustered. Yeah, he said with a small laugh. I guess I should have picked up on that. Yeah, Katsuki said, somewhat awkwardly. And then, I'm sorry. Izuku nearly fell out of his chair. Kachan? I said sorry, alright? I'm not saying it again. Katsuki looked down, suddenly interested in his shoes. I might as well make the most of this damn truth quirk and say this before I lose my nerve. I never should have treated you like that, and I know my stupid anger isn't an excuse or anything. It was wrong. And before you extra say anything, he said with a glare, I absolutely know that Deku was way too forgiving for his own good. He looked back at Izuku. So yeah, I'm sorry. He said it through somewhat gritted teeth, and a scowl was set on his face, and he was glaring daggers at him now, but he meant it. This was 100% real. He was sorry for what he had done to him, and Izuku got the apology he never thought he would get, so. Thank you so much, Izuku said, to the lump in his throat. I think you know I've forgiven you. Katsuki clicked his tongue and looked away, but not before rolling his eyes in exasperation. Of course you have, you idiot. It's finished, finally. Yeah, this took me a while to record, not because the chapter is super long or anything, but half because I was procrastinating, and then another half because I live with my family, and it's not always quiet for me to be able to record, or as quiet as it is that it is in my videos. And also because schoolwork and school. Anyways, I have some funny haha bloopers for you guys this week. So, well, not this week. I don't post weekly. I have some funny haha bloopers for you today. So I hope you enjoy them. It's only one, but like, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you laugh. See you guys in the next one. I hope you enjoyed this, and bye. I just I want to understand. Everyone else turned to look at Katsuki, interested but obviously apprehensive about what he was going to say. Honestly, Izuku felt the same exact way. What was he going to say? Katsuki shifted, looking down at the floor uncomfortably. It was a long time before he spoke. Part of the reason was because my quirk makes me have low blood pressure, and my body has to constantly pump me with adrenaline to keep me conscious. I had a lot of anger and nowhere to put it. Izuku blanched in shock.